Okay, so here is the kind of question you might see in an exam. It asks you for the area and perimeter of a semicircle. Semi means half, so it's the area and perimeter of half a circle. Now notice that it says area and perimeter, not circumference, because you only see a circumference when you have an entire circle, and we have half of one here. Also, that's a good hint that you're going to have the circumference and a radii or a diameter to include. So whenever you see perimeter being used on a shape, make sure you get every single part of the outside. So the shape is called a closed shape, and I'll explain what that means a bit later on. Okay, so we're going to work out the area. So area, apple pies are 2, is how I remember it. So if say for instance my radius was 9, okay, I'm going to do pi times 9 squared. But I must remember that I have to divide it by 2. So I'm going to show the examiner that I understand that my area is being divided by 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I follow BIDMAS. If you're ever unsure, just write it down to help you, okay? I've put brackets around my index to remind myself to do it, but if there isn't a bracket, just check. Look, r squared is an index, so we need to do that first. So we've got 9 squared, which means 9 times 9. So we have 81 times pi divided by 2. Okay, so when you see a fraction, the bar just means divide by the bottom number. So rather than writing a divided by 2, I'm actually going to put area of shape because it's just easier to look at, and also tells the examiner that I understand that this formula with a gives me the area of entire circle, and this formula gives me half of it. So now I've done my index. I have a divide, so I can either divide by 2 now, or I can multiply the top. So what I'm actually going to do is work the top of the fraction out first and then divide through by 2 at the end. So 81 times pi is just written like this when it's grammatically correct, and then I'm going to divide by 2. So you can either leave it like this as a fraction, because that's as simplified as it can be, because 2 is not a factor of 81, so it won't fit in and simplify down as a fraction. Or you can turn it into a decimal. Now I personally think written as a fraction is really nice, but if you're happier you can just do the bus stop method, or do it in your head, whichever one makes you more comfortable, to work out the decimal. So 2's into 8 go 4, 2's into 1 won't go, so I've finished with my whole numbers, so I'm going to put a decimal point. Then I'm going to give my remainder, which is 1, because 2 times 40 gave me 80. And I've got 81, so I've got a remainder of 1 to deal with. So 2's into 10 go 5, so actually that 81 divided by 2 gives me 40.5 lots of pi, and that, sorry, decimal point, and that is my answer for the area, and that's it. So just treat it as a normal circle, but just make a note to yourself that you need to divide through by 2, because it would be such a shame to work it out and then lose the last mark because you didn't divide through. And remember not to label the area just as A, because usually we assume that to be a whole circle and we don't have that. So now we need to work out the perimeter of the shape. Notice that we're not using the word circumference because the circumference only gives you the outside of the circle as a curve rather than the straight line along here. Now notice at the moment I know my radius is 9, but when I work out a circumference of a shape, of a circle, I need to know pi d, which is my diameter. So actually d is going to be 2 lots of my radius. So the first thing I need to do, And I'd always encourage you in your exam to write down your diameter and your radius in every circle question that you get, and label them really clearly. So whenever I see a circle paper in an exam, I always write R equals 9, and then my diameter equals twice that, because it stops me accidentally using the wrong one. Sorry, my pen's not working very well. Let's try a different colour. So I know my diameter is actually 18 because it's double my radius. So if I work out the circumference of this circle, I'm essentially going to be working out this, the whole of the outside, so how far you would travel if you walked around the outside of a circle. And that's going to be pi times 18, which is 18 pi. Now the problem with that is that gives you an entire circle, but we have a semicircle, so that's half of it. So actually, this is called an arc. It's when you have the outside of a circle, but it's not completely joined up. So actually, my arc is 9 pi, because it's half of my normal circumference. Now notice that this is not a proper shape because it's not closed, i.e. it's got a gap. It's just a line at the moment. It's not actually 2D because it's not a closed shape. So what we need to do is now take this arc and close it up, so we get an actual object rather than just a line or a curve. So to do that, I need to add on my diameter, which was 18. Now how we write this is 9 pi plus 18. And that's our answer for our perimeter. It doesn't really matter which way round you write them, unless, for instance, you had an answer like 9 pi minus 17. It's far more grammatically correct to write a negative number at the end of your mathematical sentence than it would be to write this, because essentially what you're doing there is writing an extra sign that you don't need, whereas here, because it's just 9 as a number, it's already implied that it's positive.